Good evening and welcome to the Laughing Monkey Music Show. Today we have on Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, about the same as I was yesterday at this time, or indeed the day before. But continuity at my age is everything. I'm
It
just happy
is.
to wake up in the morning.
Well, I want to thank you for taking some time today. I know you've been doing interviews for God, 52 years now, and I'm sure you've heard it all. So hopefully we can make this enjoyable or brief enough to share the word of your new album, which is fantastic. Um, it's out on the 28th of this month. Just want to say before we ask you any questions is I received it a little while ago, the whole album. I've been listening to it. It was like an early Christmas gift to me. The record label's been releasing singles. You really have had much of a choice, have you, as far as the singles they've done?
Although the thing is that that's their job. They're there to do marketing and promotion, and that's what I think those. I call them teasers. They're singles seems to suggest to me it's something on a small piece of plastic that is released as a double-sided record, as it
Right, right.
used
And
to be
it's
back in the 60s and 70s. But essentially it's just a little teaser. It's a little idea of what people are going to be getting, and for literally downloading or streaming only. So that's the record company's job is to find ways to bring that to public attention. So the songs that they chose to do, at least originally we had discussions, were not my choices, but they presented an argument for choosing those songs, and I thought, well, okay, well, you guys have been doing this for a while. You're supposed to be good at it, so we'll go along with what you think. Same thing with the
well,
video directors that were appointed. They certainly have not produced videos that echo my own visual references for writing those songs, but it's perfectly valid because it's somebody else listening to the music and the lyrics and coming up with their own visual interpretation. And so I have to respect that. That's absolutely fine. And if I don't have any real beef with the video content, then I'm probably going to say, yeah, well, okay, that's fine. Yeah, we'll do that. And because I'm an easy guy to work with. But this is the commercial side of getting a record out there to the public. It's the slightly unseemly commercial application of skills and efforts that I prefer not to be involved with, if I can. I'm bad enough having to do all this press and promo, but the reality is that I handed over the masters to the record and the artwork back in June of last year, and that was job done. And now I'm
okay.
2 weeks. Am I 2 weeks? Yes, I'm 2 weeks into the writing of their next album. So my mind is really creatively focused elsewhere at the moment, and in a few days' time, I have to start rehearsing the live show again because it's 2 months since Jethro Tull did a gig, and have to get back into physical and mental shape, as do the rest of the band. We've got to spend a little daily time rehearsing, practicing that material again to walk on stage and play it together.
Well, you have a fantastic band. I mean, and even the new guy Joe on guitar. I mean, Florian was ridiculously awesome. So I'm looking forward to hearing Joe play. I mean, as far as musicians and playing,
Yeah,
on
well,
the new
he's
album.
um, he- he's
Yeah,
he's a
sure.
he's a young guy, much like Florian was when Florian first joined the band 16 years ago, whatever it was. I mean, not Jethro Tull, but he was doing a lot of solo shows with me with orchestras, and he stood in for Martin
Right.
Barr a few times. And Martin was not available to do some Jethro Tull concerts, but yeah, Florian's worked with me on many records and many, many, many tours. So um, when he decided to hang up his touring hat,
Hmm.
although he did come back to join us in September for one, two, three, four, 5 shows because young Joe, being young, had not been fully vaccinated and was not.
Oh,
He wouldn't have got entry to those countries without having to spend 10 days in quarantine or something. So Florian happily came out and rejoined the band again for a few shows, which was delightful for him, delightful for us, and but then Joe's vaccinations kicked in, and he's been able to do the concerts from basically September, mid-September onwards, and I should be seeing him in a couple of weeks
Excellent.
at London Heathrow Airport to get on a flight.
But Florian played on a lot of this new album, though, right? Did he play on
Yeah, he played on
Miss
the original
Tidbits
7 tracks.
and Baron Beth? Is that his guitar solo on those two, or his guitar work
Is what,
on
sorry?
Is that his? So it's Florian's guitar work on Miss Tidbits and Baron Beth. Those two
That's
tracks.
right.
Those are
Yeah, yeah,
his.
yeah. And
Well, those are
Florian
so
not
good.
only played the guitar, but all the solos were played live in the studio as part of the arrangement. Because as much as possible, these first 7 songs were recorded, very much like we would perform them live on stage. So, Florian actually played those solos. Boom, that was it. No editing, no
So
repair
good.
work. It was that they were like a live performance, which I think captures the spirit of recording at its best when you are in a studio together playing in real time with real people and real
Mhm.
musical instruments. So it's an enjoyable way of working. Unfortunately, the last 5 songs, I had to do it the other way, which was to sit at home and record them piecemeal myself because of the COVID lockdowns. And
Right.
when I finally finished off the album, it was a bit of a stitched together job where 3 of the guys sent in some parts to be accommodated into the final mixes, but things that they recorded at home. But maybe that was a good thing because it gave the album a little different
Mention.
dynamics, different shape, different instrumentation. So it maybe made it more of a rounded album than simply having everybody playing on every track, which might have not been perhaps as ultimately as satisfying.
Are you always working on music? I mean, because you're always releasing as a fan. I know you like your collections and stuff, and you've had um, Steve Wilson's remix some stuff for you and stuff. But as you say, you're starting a new album now. Prior to this, do you kind of have a guitar laying around, or your flute, or lyrics? Are you kind of always noodling ideas to the side, or do you just kind of take a break from it?
Well, I don't usually spend time. I spend a lot of time actually just generally practicing and rehearsing. I try and play the flute every day, for example, because it's maintaining your embouchure, the muscles, the muscle memory that goes with it all. Um, I have a guitar sitting, just over there, and I have a flute sitting over there, and I'm in the office. I'm not even in the studio, so I always have couple of instruments around, but it's not so much that I'm always writing music. When I write music, I'd rather make it more of a deliberate act. So I
Okay.
told everybody I was going to start a new album at 9 a.m. on the 1st of January 2022, just as I did back in 1st of January of 2017 and the 1st of January in 2014 and the 1st of January in 2012. So I've made a habit of putting myself on the spot and doing what it is I've told everybody I'm going to do. Otherwise, I'd look a bit silly. And in fact, I did look a bit silly this year because I said 9 o'clock on 1st of January. And unfortunately, due to emails and whatever, it was 9:30 when I started. So I was half an
Oh
hour
my
late.
God, I know I'm gonna forgive you.
Yeah.
You are very deliberate and it's very respectful. I've always loved that about you. Would you say you're no frills? You're not, you're not messing around. You get right to the point, and I appreciate that about you.
Well, I think the thing to me about making the commitment to begin a project. I mean, you have no idea whether it's going to be whether it's going to work. You might start work at 9 o'clock and lunchtime comes around and you've got nothing.
Right.
And I think that pressure is a great thing because it's really quite exciting when you get maybe 1 or 2 ideas and then you revisit them again later in the day and perhaps they survive. Perhaps they get pushed aside and you do something the next day. But it's quite exciting. It's exhilarating to find that you are able to summon some kind of a creative result just by putting yourself on the spot and approaching it with a pretty empty mind, which is, I think, rather good. And I try and do that in the process of writing, arranging, and then even in recording. There'll be lots of things that will appear in the rehearsal room as refinements and additions, which just occur to me spontaneously at the time of beginning to work on things with the band. And we'll introduce a new bit of music, and I'll I'll excuse myself for half an hour and then come back with another section that I've just thought of, and I find that very exhilarating, and it's nice to have all the preparation done, but you leave a little wiggle room to come up with some new stuff and maybe change some things or add some things, and the band are part of that process, because it's important that they understand the general structure of the song, but that they come in and put their own refinements into place, so it personalizes it from their perspective, and I would imagine makes it much more enjoyable than reading the dots that somebody has presented to you and said, play this. Don't change anything. Play it exactly like this, which of course is what musicians in a classical orchestra have got to do. You've got to play it like it was written by Beethoven, Mozart, Handel, Bach, whoever it might be. No deviation. Even a soloist in a flute concerto will be permitted to give it some expression, but he or she will have to play the notes that were written. That's what conductors are there to ensure. So even an enlightened liberal conductor is probably still going to say, listen, I'm afraid you really do have to play that B natural there. It's written in the music score.
You're still the engine.
And if you're von Karajan, you're probably going to insist on really controlling the whole thing in a much more detailed way, tempo-wise, expression-wise. And James Galway, who was the first principal flautist of the Berlin Philharmonic under von Karajan in James's earlier years, found it very difficult to have to always work under that very authoritative, heavy hand of von Karajan, when James sort of felt maybe he could express things in a slightly different way. Eventually, he decided he would have to leave and undertake a career as a soloist and performing with many different orchestras. But that's what I can't understand. You see, I can just not imagine what it'd be like to have to spend my life learning such great works, but only ever experiencing performance as a kind of a replication of something that was written 200 years before. It doesn't.
The forever cover band.
It doesn't appeal to me at all. It wouldn't appeal to the guys in Jethro Tull if I said you've got to play exactly what your predecessor played on an album 40 years ago. You've got to play exactly those notes. That wouldn't be great for them. So they understand. You kind of get the gist of it. You get the key elements that you will play in the same way, but you bring a few little twists and turns in terms of decoration, of little extemporization. That's what makes it come alive for them. So I think that's why the guys work well. They understand the subtle differences between playing what their predecessor did, or predecessors, because there've been a lot of them, and at the same time being able to, put your own little nuances and add a few notes, take a few out, change a few if necessary. But it's a fine-tuned balance that you arrive at, and they're good at doing that.
What's great about your music, and I've been able to go back for years now, is I'm always finding new things in your music, because you have a lot of stuff in it. It's very fulfilling, your songs, because you play, you get the melody with your strumming, with your voice, and then your flute is another voice. So it's like, even when you're not singing, which is also going to be a challenge for you to be singing and playing flute, that's a muscle you got to keep up. It's going to be such a challenge. But when you're writing, I can't imagine how you're adding all these different layers as you're writing your song. I mean, you have 3 different pieces you're bringing in before you even go to the band to add their parts.
Yeah, but a lot of the things that I do as my contribution, they're not maybe completely refined at the point when we begin recording, because the Zealot Gene, for example, the 7 full band tracks, I was standing in a corridor outside the studio with a microphone, and I was singing and playing my parts as a guide, so they would know where they were in the song.
Okay.
But I was also shouting out, second chorus coming up, 2, 3, 4, and just as cues for them. But when you're an acoustic musician or a singer, for technical audio separation reasons, it's not very likely you're going to get a satisfying master. There's always going to be some, drum leak coming through the walls, and bass particularly will infiltrate things. And, it's quite often not only preferable, but absolutely necessary to record your acoustic stuff in isolation. So there's no leak. I mean, Stephen Wilson,
Right.
poor Stephen Wilson, has spent hours and hours and hours having to clean up Jethro Tull album masters from times
How
gone
did he
by,
get
because
involved
all
in all the mixing?
leaks and hums and noises that he needs to get rid of in order to get some
Right.
transparency into the multi-track mixes. Yes, he came because the record company EMI at the time wanted to, I think, do a commemorative remix of Aqualung, and they asked me, did I know anybody who I would recommend to do a remix, because I made it clear I didn't want to do that. And I looked around and saw that Stephen Wilson had remixed the classic album by King Crimson, which, knowing or believing that Robert Fripp was a pretty tough cookie, who was a fairly much of a taskmaster in wanting things done a certain way. So I heard. So I thought, well, if he would let Stephen Wilson remix, in the court of the Crimson King,
Right.
it must be something positive and displaying a certain level of expertise and understanding that would have informed that choice. So I got in touch with Stephen Wilson. We sent him a couple of tracks to see how he got on with it. He sent me the mixes, and I said, yeah, well, that sounds great. If you'd like to do that, we'll fire away. And Stephen will, usually run things by me every so often when he's working on the mix, and we see how it's going, and we communicate by email. And then maybe when he gets to do the 5.1 surround mixes, I go to his studio and listen to the end result. And my input is always there, but it's not. I don't want to be breathing down his neck while he's actually working. You can make a few suggestions and offer a few little comments, but by and large, I think you've got to let someone get on with it and do it to their best ability, right, in the way they feel is appropriate. And Stephen is he listens to the original mixes. He analyzes the way the balances work of the different instruments and where they are in the stereo spectrum, positioned, and sets out to not to recreate it, but to build upon those, quite tenuous relationships. And so he might give a little more prominence to a guitar solo than was perhaps on the original mix, or he might, back off the vocals a little bit in the chorus or something. But he's thinking it through all the time, and never deviating so far from the spirit of the original mixes that I did however long ago. So I think we have a good working relationship. But having said that, his time is probably up, because he's recently finished off all the many tracks of studio work and live performances of The Broadsword and the Beast, the album of 1982. Nice. And that's due for release in July this year. And I think Stephen always said, well, I'll do the stuff from the 70s and then that's me done. But he did happily go on to do the album from 1980, and then the material that we recorded in 81 and 82. But I'm not expecting him to go beyond that, simply because, he's got his own life to live, and he too is wanting to get back on the road and get out there and perform and not be caught up.
Will you guys continue on
too much?
Though?
We will. What, sorry?
Will you continue on with the mixes to finish up the mixes, or it might stop here?
Well, that I'm sure that Stephen has probably had enough by now. And
no, I'm saying, will you have somebody else continue on? I'm saying.
Oh, I see what you mean. Well, that depends on the record company, because Warner Music have to make their decisions about the commercial viability of going into all that time and trouble and releasing albums that, in some cases there is no extra material, there's no bonus material, and no supplementary recordings or demos or anything. There's just nothing, particularly when we got into the digital age, because usually I just recorded I think really from Crest of an Ape onwards, there's not a busting amount of material other than that stuff that literally made up the album, because that's all I recorded, and the albums were digitally mastered, and that's it. So there are no demos, there are no alternative versions of stuff, as far as I'm aware, for most of the albums. I mean, the Broadsword and the Beast, there was a huge amount of extra work was done, and during a period of time of writing a lot of music and then deciding on the final shape of the album. But once we move beyond that, I don't think there's there's a busting amount of additional material, and that's kind of in a way what makes these things interesting for the fans, is they're getting to hear the original album, they're getting to hear the original album remix, they're getting to hear the original album in surround sound, they're getting to hear a whole bunch of songs and demos and variations that make for a package that is a much bigger listening experience. But if you're unable to offer that to them simply because you only ever recorded what you recorded and that's what was on the record, then there's nothing more to offer. So I'm not sure. I'll discuss it with the record company once we've got the Broadsword album out of the way. I'm sure these conversations will continue, and we'll see what happens, and if so, with whom, if it's not Steven Wilson.
I respect that. I know we're almost out of time, so I just want to tell people that are listening, go to the website. Any question he's been asked, Ian's been asked ever, is answered. He has tons of information. All those questions are answered. Go to the Jethro Tull website. Everything is there.
Well, actually, it's a good point, because on the all too frequently asked questions, which was there really for the press to save them time, when you're doing an interview and they ask the same questions over and over again, they might as well copy and paste what it says on the website and get on to some other questions that are not there. Then it's really to help the press. It's not to be critical in any way. But, but with the new album, I have actually just prepared another FAQ for the Zealot Gene, which I will add to the FAQ and on the website. So there'll be even more for people to
it's everything. Your instruments
copy
on
and
paste
if they want to write about it, then we try and make life easy. It's an informational website. I'm not there to enter into dialogue and chat rooms. I'm there to offer information to people, and whether they're fans or the media. It's all about giving people information on in varying degrees of depth, and some of it obviously historical, because the website's been running since 1998, and there's a lot of elements of it that I wrote way back then, and they're still embedded in the website today. If you want to read about Ian Anderson's flutes or Indian food or whatever it might be.
I love those. I love the music part. I was so geeking out about the recording of it. It was the best. Those are the best parts of it. Things people don't always ask you.
Yeah, well, we try not to make it overly elaborate. I mean, every so often we prune some of the things that are redundant, or I just don't need to be there anymore, and replace it with up-to-date stuff. But by and large, the most crucial thing, of course, is giving people information about new product, or played on somebody else's record, and of course the tour dates, ever changing as they are in these COVID years.
And they're all there.
We try and give people the information. Anyway, good to talk to you, and take care and stay safe.
Take care. You care. Go out and buy the album, everybody. It's 28th. It's awesome.